Thanks, Pierce, so much. And this is obviously a subject that's dear to my heart. But first, I just wanted to say thank you for putting me on a panel with someone who's both a rocket scientist and works at NASA, because this is kind of like a lifelong dream for me. I can always tell people that I was on a panel with someone from NASA. So, it's an interesting panel because we're going to kind of co-moderate each other and kind of have a dialogue, I guess, about the inner workings of both of our experiences. And I think a great place to start would just, we will start with NASA, because I think everyone's going, what the hell is NASA doing in this space? And so I'll turn it to Andrew to give you guys a little insight.
Okay, great, thanks. And I am not a rocket scientist. I almost flunked out of physics in high school. Luckily, I found out later that...
Don't ruin my dream, by the way.
Luckily, I found out later that geology is a lot easier than physics, and so I studied planetary geology. But actually, I came back to NASA because for 10 years I've been an entrepreneur and also a political organizer. That may seem odd, but in fact, we are equally thrilled to be on the same panel with Current TV and back in New York with Etsy, because we feel like at NASA that we really need to change. This is our 50th anniversary, and we did some pretty phenomenal things in our first 10 years in the 1960s, saying we're going to go to a place where human beings have never been before. We have no clue how to do it. We set a fixed time frame within which we were going to go do it. And it was like a great big startup company with an unlimited budget. But it was pretty exciting. I wasn't alive, but I've met a lot of the people who were, including the people that went to the moon. For the last 40 years, at least in our sort of internal self-deprecating cultural sense of it, we've really kind of been underwhelming. That's just a personal opinion, but it's shared by a lot of people in the agency, and we're experiencing problems with workforce attraction and retention. We're experiencing problems with a lot of programs being started, and then after a lot of money and time is put into them, being stopped for political or other reasons. And so we feel like we're in a little bit of crisis, frankly. And specifically here in the Bay Area, we have a 5,000-person, 800-acre research center down in Mountain View in the heart of Silicon Valley. But a lot of people don't even know that we're here. I mean, how many people in this room know there's a NASA center down in Silicon Valley? Okay, so maybe 40, maybe 50%, okay? I don't think that's very good. So we have an external public relations, if you will, problem, which translates into a political problem. People don't even know that we're here. Internally, we have a corollary problem, which is that it's not the kind of really hotbed of innovation and exciting workplace that you think it might be. So a few of us, when a new guy got appointed to run this particular NASA center down in Silicon Valley, were brought in to help try to figure out, how can we change this? This is not right. This is NASA. We should be the most exciting and innovative place on the planet, or maybe on other planets. So this is the new director of NASA. This is the new director of NASA Ames Research Center. And as you can tell, he's a by the book traditional guy. This is the goat herd that we have at NASA Ames, seriously. And in the background there you can see our runway and a couple of our hangars, and there's a supercomputer in there, which you can't really see. But this is retired Brigadier General Pete Worden, who runs NASA Ames Research Center. Here's Pete in his wizard outfit. And here is Pete in his Russian general's uniform. So he shares this same sense that we really need to shake things up a little bit. We really need to change. And so we brought a few of us in to try to figure out how to do that. We do some good things internally, and we started to look at what's worked for us. These are examples of missions in which we've actually invited public participation and collaboration. And so a few of us who were not working for NASA, in my case for 10 years, were asked to come in and say, hey, how do we do this? And we really focused on collaboration as a way, like getting people actually who are around us geographically in Silicon Valley, who do have, are really at the heart of technological innovation on the planet, who are creating a lot of cultural trends that then spread nationally and globally. Just open the gates, literally, and bring them there. So we opened the gates. We threw, it's a little hard to see, but this is an 8,000-person rave that we threw in a hangar down at NASA Ames called Yuri's Night. And it was 4,000 people 2 years ago and 8,000 people this year. This is a house that we rented. Some of us who came newly to NASA when Pete Worden was appointed decided to rent a house together. and to start to literally kind of blend our life and our work in a way that many startups do, but in a way that traditionally NASA has not done at all. We started to throw BarCamp style events, where we would have no agenda. We'd bring people from outside of NASA, from the entrepreneurial community. We'd bring people from inside NASA. We'd sit down together and we'd talk about challenges that we're facing, sort of similar to this conversation that we're going to have here. And we, of course, invite our robots along to those as well. We, at our NASA mansion that we all rented together, we held a Super Happy Dev House, which is an event that happens more or less monthly where some of the best hackers from around the Bay Area come together and they spend 12 to 24 hours hacking on software together. In this case, this is a space-themed Super Happy Dev House. Finally, we started doing things like Twittering. Actually, at that previous event that I showed you where we had brought some entrepreneurs from the Bay Area, we had the Biz Stone, the CEO of Twitter, a little over a year ago, come and talk to some of the sort of older NASA management and talk about what is Twitter and why do it. I don't know if any of you saw, but a few weeks ago, the Mars Phoenix lander, actually over a month ago now, the Mars Phoenix lander landed on Mars, and within a week, it was one of the top 15 followed Twitter accounts on the planet, and almost 30,000 followers now. So we really have been trying to do these things that open us up culturally. One of the most successful, I'd say, is actually our use of Second Life. We tried to, as Amit spoke to earlier today about co-working, we tried to start getting NASA co-working, getting our NASA scientists and engineers outside of our physical campus into the entrepreneurial community here, actually co-locating with technology entrepreneurs, but we found there's some legal and financial challenges to opening a new federal facility. So we said, okay, we'll do it in Second Life. Very low cost, very quick, and it's actually really struck a chord, and we've got people at all 10 NASA centers who are now co-working with us in Second Life, as well as people from around the planet who don't work for NASA. And all of our work there is actually done by volunteers. None of it, other than a few of us who get paid by NASA to do our work within NASA, everything built in Second Life for us is done by volunteers who are actually excited to contribute to the space program. And we hold mixed reality events where we don't need to fly around the world anymore to bring people together, people in Second Life and people in real life, and they're collaborating hands-on at events that are taking place both in real and virtual space. And we created a program kind of to encapsulate all this called NASA Collab, stands for collaboration, because you need a program for everything at NASA. We're still in the early phases of it, but we feel like we've really struck a chord both internally and externally in terms of people internally getting excited about the idea of learning from external communities that are also technophilic and learning how we can kind of reinvent ourselves and do our jobs better. And it also seems to have struck a chord outside of NASA as well. People seem to love the idea of being invited to actually get involved and participate in their government, participate in the space program. And our sort of metric for that is a lot of press coverage and being invited to events like this. So with that, I'll leave it there. There's a lot more to tell, but it's been a pretty interesting and exciting last year. And the last thing I'll say about it is just that we now have had enough success with it here at NASA Ames that we're taking it nationwide. We're taking it to all 10 NASA centers, the idea of co-working, the idea of these BarCamp style conferences, and we're even now being approached by EPA and other federal agencies to sort of learn what we've done and how to replicate it elsewhere. So,
cool, awesome. By the way, I'm on this panel too.
Sorry.
I'm more fascinated in NASA, but just you guys giving you some broad strokes on Current. How many have heard of Current TV before? Oh, good. How many people have watched Current TV before? Oh, that's pretty good. So Current was the brainchild of former Vice President Al Gore and his partner Joel Hyatt. It was, I guess, almost 5 years in the making now. They bought Joel and Al bought a little television network called NWI, which was one of the under the Vivendi umbrella when they were kind of fire selling all of their networks, and most bought by Universal, but they were able to kind of pull off this last little network that was about 17 million homes at the time. And the vision behind Current was, Al was responding to a number of things that were happening culturally and socially, kind of in the wake of 2000, 2004, and I think he saw Current as an opportunity to, what he calls what he said was democratized television. I think we didn't realize how quickly that would seem very passé, as the internet kind of just allowed for kind of ubiquitous opportunities for new content opportunities and people to be heard, but it's still, television is still the most powerful medium in the world, and it's still incredibly powerful. The idea of current and this idea of democratizing with the little d was, how do you create a television network, a news and information network that opens a platform for viewer creators all over the world to tell the stories that are being ignored by mainstream media? And that became the challenge at the very early stages of Current. So they bought a television network, and then basically had 8 months to flip it into a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 day cable station that would serve and be compelling and leverage this idea of user-generated content. And this was, the idea that the idea of democratizing television or democratizing the medium came, down on the president of programming, David Newman, and I was at the time starting as kind of his chief of staff assistant, and we were in this giant 30,000 square foot office in Soma, and we were like trying to interpret what that meant at the time. Like, what does that mean? How do you democratize television? And the most logical extension of that was this idea of viewer-created content. So and then the obvious next step was, how do you make that into a compelling product? And we spent we're almost on our 3rd anniversary. We launched the network 8 months later, in August 1st, 2005. We're coming up on our 3rd year anniversary, and since we've grown from 17 million homes to close to 60 million homes globally. We have networks in the UK and Ireland, and also in Italy. And so we've figured this out and kind of understood how you get compelling content, how you franchise this model, and how you build actually a very interesting product by collaborating with user creators all over the world. So that's kind of the very quick story of Current. I mean, there's lots of things in between. We also have a website that does lots of things, but I think I want to just throw it back and get back kind of into a conversation, because I think that would be more interesting for all of you guys. And I'm interested, NASA, going back to NASA, one of the things that struck me is in that huge bureaucratic 100,000 person, organization, federally funded, what was the biggest challenge in coming in with some of these very new kind of ways of thinking that, were probably thought of as so foreign to most of the people internally?
I think it was, for us, and I imagine by contrast with Current, was getting internal buy-in to the idea that there was a problem. It's a very subjective statement to make when we don't have a bottom line of profitability to adhere to as a government bureaucracy. So we had this hypothesis, but we had to kind of demonstrate it. And we had to come up with, we had to come up with mechanisms for doing that. And we found really the most successful were subjective measures of sort of thought leaders outside of NASA coming to sit down and talk with us and talk us through their experiences in large enterprises, and then learn about ours and give their feedback. And there was at least a willingness to listen. But we found it was really sort of credible external thought leaders that gave internal management the impetus to say, hey, actually we do have a problem here, and we actually need to do some remedial work to start to return to realizing our full potential.
Cool. So I guess
what was your biggest challenge at Current?
For us was just figuring out a model. It's like the mandate was there. It was like, go democratize TV, and it's like, fuck, where do we start? It didn't. it just didn't seem like very it was just, we didn't really know at that point. It was like, there's all this, it was at a point in 2004, pre-YouTube. How do you do this? How do you create? Is there enough people out there who want to do this? Is there, where do you find them? How do you get them excited about the opportunity? How do you build an awareness for this? What are they supposed to make? How do you teach them how to make this stuff? So I think that for us, it was just, it's like constantly iterating a model and like constantly figuring out how the first part was just like get rolling, and then it's changing it's a little bit like changing tires on an airplane in mid-flight, but like we're constantly thinking about how do we do this, constantly thinking about how to do it better and work more closely, and how do but always, I guess at least to the next question, which we were talking about earlier, which is like why collaborate? But that was always something is like, why are we doing this? Like beyond just the mandate, it very quickly became clear that that this was a very powerful idea, which was, Al said, and it went exactly to what his vision was, which was you can create something really incredible if you open up this platform and share it with these users who now are enabled. And instead of having this top-down, the control by these top-down, news organizations, you create this, you organize with this mechanisms for all bottom-up participation where, everyone is, it wasn't really ended up being a democracy, but it ended up being a meritocracy where the best pieces and the best content producers and the most interesting stories would rise to the top and make it to television. But it became just an incredibly powerful model. And actually, what I always say is like, it started out being the end, like the idea of democratizing collaboration was like the end. And the reality is what we've learned is it's actually a means to an end. So the end is actually create an incredibly interesting and compelling and television network that a consumer can really get valuable information from, that they're going to want to tune into, that they're going to want to share with their friends, that they're going to take away from, that will help build an enterprise and a business. And it just happened that this idea of viewer-created content became one of the keys to doing it differently than anyone had done it before. So we were getting these stories that like no one had ever seen before. We were getting to places that no one had ever seen before, and it's like these tentacles of people with cameras and edit systems who are like all over the world, who were had access into these subcultures and concepts and ideas and new ways of storytelling that would like dramatically change the look and feel of what a news and information network could be.
Did it change your business model as well, or?
I think it didn't change it changed I think it basically became, it was more of a programming model. So, we started with that, with a programming model of use viewer created content as but it really became much more of it's a production model, a very powerful production model that has, obvious cost benefits where, you're pushing so much of the soft costs away from the news organization. You're pushing away, and also just, the ability to like have, an internal producer who is collaborating with 100 people at the same time, or people who are just collaborating with each other, and making stuff, on their own and uploading it to our website. But, the model just, it just blew out the traditional concept of like it's like, because we have internal production teams, and it's like you just see the difference between, you have an internal production team where, it's traditional television where they got 3 stories they're working on and they go out and shoot them, and there's travel costs and there's this cost and that. And instead, it's like we have this vast network of producers all over the world who, really we're at a point now where it's like anytime, any place, anywhere, we can tell a compelling story differently than any other news network can. And we first started seeing this, like we didn't, the reality is like most people thought this was going to fail internally. I think that they originally thought that we would get 10% of our content through viewer-created content from the very beginning, from the first month of our launch. It was over 30%, and it's never gone below that. And we're constantly increasing the amount of viewer-created content that is filling the television network. But the first real kind of key example was was after Hurricane Katrina. We had a kid on a flat bottom boat who was like literally like turning the camera on himself going like, I'm rescuing people right now. And it was just an amazing moment to be like, dude, there's Anderson Cooper on a bridge like telling you what's happening. There's like a kid who's like a senior in college flipping the camera around on himself, showing you, living, experiencing like that, like an incredible moment in history. And I think that that was like a turning point. And the second one was really like the Gaza disengagement, when we had like these guys who were like literally inside of a synagogue as they were like pulling the Torah out, and these Israeli soldiers were like crying as they had to, you know, like, and it was like, and then these guys were sending us these files over Instant Messenger, and we were like beating news organizations to get that content to air with an entire different context to it. So, you know, it ended up, you know, I guess, you know, you look at the business model, it was a win for us, but also just in terms of product, it just totally changed what you can do when you have that kind of that network.
Can I ask a question?
Piers, I'll throw to
Yeah.
you.
Can I ask a question? When we were preparing for this talk, one of the interesting things that you talked about was, although you're a user-generated channel, actually there's a group of super users who tend to create the majority of the content.
Yeah.
That you work with that.
Yeah, I
group.
mean, I think that's one of the big lessons learned is like, you know, what I really found is like, there's like this, you know, when you're going out and you're you know, you have a model that's relying on collaboration, you have to understand like what's the end to it, why am I trying to do it, and then you have to figure out what's the best way to go about doing it. I'm sure the same thing is with the certain different programs that you guys have. So for us, you know, we really found that actually trying to replicate YouTube was never going to be a win for us. We had to create really compelling content that was good enough to be interesting for a TV viewer. So we have like, you know, it's kind of the 80-20 rule, where we have like probably 20% of our contributors create 80% of the content, and we keep on going back to them. And they, you know, they've almost become, there's almost like a current economy where they're like almost making enough money to just live on making content for us. And they every single piece they get better, and every single piece like their, you know, their relationship with an internal producer strengthens whatever idea they're working on. And is that, I mean, how do you find the same things as some of the things you've been working on?
Yeah, I mean, what we've done with our Collab program is really try to create a community for NASA, right? A hands-on participatory community. You know, we'd always done pretty well online by some measures. You know, 4 million unique visitors in a single day for one of the Mars landings to look at pictures, which is great. Yet we didn't have people really feeling like they were part of it in a way that was really meaningful, or let alone that they could actually contribute. So we found, yeah, groups of, you know, dozens or hundreds of people that we develop really deep relationships with over time are really what has helped us to start to change internally, culturally. And I think also it helped us be more relevant to the rest of our society. And we do that through co-working. You know, we have dozens of people together, open space style events, you know, Second Life, those sorts of things that create more, you know, one-on-one or few-on-few touch points between people, and not all just through our NASA.gov, which is very sort of one-way push content, or through you know, our press releases and our traditional PR.
And I think, you know, I think kind of similar models is like the different tiers of collaboration and that we learned is like when we started, we just had this idea of viewer created content. It was like, go make a segment of television. And since then, it's always been like, how do we constantly lower the bar for entry? So, you know, the next thing was viewer created ad messages. We were like kind of at the forefront, I guess. You know, Converse Gallery was one of the very first, but, you know, we had this model and we still continue to have this model of, you know, engaging our sponsors and using our community to allow our users to create advertising messaging in kind of collaboration with the advertisers. So that's kind of was a second kind of component where we said, well, we can probably take that, what we're doing on viewer created content for the network, and probably do the same thing for ads. And actually like our studies are off the charts. Like the user likes the viewer created ad like a 9-to-1 over the, sorry for the ad people in the house, but and then we've now our website has become an even lower bar of participation, which is it's a social news feed, kind of like Dig, but then we're using that as a mechanism to create a headline news show where the top rated segment or story that is chosen every hour becomes part of a news update. So anyone can help shape. We use our community to help shape what the news headlines that our viewers think or our community thinks are important. So it's we're not necessarily, it's not top down. It's not CNN saying these are the important stories of the day, or New York Times saying these are the important stories of the day, but rather our users saying, yeah, we think these are really interesting, and that one should be that should be part of the news that reflects what we care about. And that was a big thing for us, was like the model of shifting from reflecting what our users cared about, rather than it was always like just put a mirror to them and let them be the guide of who we should ultimately be.
There's a pretty good analog for us there too, where we're really pretty good again about pushing out our messages about this is what we're doing. Hey, look, isn't it great? We're not very good about listening, I think, and saying, do you think we should go back to the moon? Do you think we should go to Mars? Do you think we should focus on the Earth science, climate change relevant work that we're doing? That happens in the political process. It doesn't happen at all in a way though that touches the people that are doing that work every day and that are actually executing that policy that ultimately gets set by the president. And I think that makes it a less sort of human experience to work on these things, because we don't experience, when we're working on them internally, the relevance or impact or perspective of the people that are paying for that work in the first place. So it's another reason for us to open up.
So we have 10 minutes left. I guess we have a couple. There was a couple of things we would just wanted to. Let's just go to the last one, which was like, what do you think the future of collaboration at NASA is? Like, how does that going to work?
Yeah, I really, and this is partly NASA, but also just partly the whole federal government. I think we have a really profound opportunity to be our government in a much more real way, and technology enables it, I think, but also the culture that we all create around technology is sort of what will make it happen. We have the ability and I think the right to know what our federal government is doing, to know everything that NASA does, in the most pithy little detail that might get put up in a Twitter post to the most detailed, blueprint for a spacecraft. As long as it's not, a national security relevant issue, and 98% of what NASA does is not, it ought to be out there, it ought to be published, it ought to be available to people to use and to improve and to push back to us. And I think we'll see a lot of our government starting to operate that way, and the push may come from a new administration that just sort of got people in it that grew up with that kind of ethos and who were used to being in those more sort of flat peer-to-peer organizations and being empowered to take ideas and run with them. I think that we're going to see that within the next 4 years, that's just sort of the standard for the way that our federal government works. Whereas today it's incredibly difficult to push that idea out and to get people to even accept that might be a good idea.
Yeah, and I think for current, it's just I think that ultimately, again, it goes to the end. Like, what are we ultimately trying to do? Which is like, inspire, enrich, inform, and and do that with our audience. And so everything we do, we want to be at the forefront of melding participation into our end product, because we think it makes for a better product. So I think that doing melding the two screens and first the news feed that becomes our headline show is kind of a first iteration of that. But like, how many other applications and how can that become one of our key kind of competitive advantages of how do you what applications can you build that take someone who is on their laptop and make them instantaneously part of the television dialogue and the conversation. And I think so much of where we're going started with technology enabling it, the inexpensive cameras and edit systems and digital literacy and people growing up making movies in their backyard. And I think it will continue to be driven by technology and the advancements that, you know, as these screens meld together. So I think that it's, you know, I think that we're at a very interesting point where UGC is, you know, which is kind of a, you know, sometimes thought of as an evil and a bad word in some, you know, in the video space. People try to figure out how to monetize it. For us, we're just focused on what is the point of UGC and why does it help what we're ultimately trying to do, which is, you know, create, inform, enrich, inspire, and kind of transform television and transform media as we know it. So with that, maybe we should just throw it up to some questions.
Yes.
Anyone?
Thanks. Thanks, guys. My question's for Ezra. So my question is outside of the aggregation and broadcasting of the content that you're collecting, how do you go beyond that to actually collaborate with both the content creators as well as the viewers? What's the actual collaboration between those people, those entities, and current look
So,
like?
you know, I guess it's more of a that's more of a tactical kind of thing. So, you know, I manage a team which has what we have a team that does specifically outreach. So how do we find those people? We have a number of in-house producers and editors who basically every single day are in contact with a network of producers all over the world, pitching stories back and forth, finding things that are, you know, reality is television is, you know, aggregation should make things scalable, but when you go to television, it becomes very difficult. So we get a lot of value out of, you know, the one-to-one contact and one-to-few contact. So, you know, a producer will literally be working with an internal producer will literally be pitching, we're getting a pitch from a producer in Egypt and working with them and kind of pointing them in directions and helping them develop their story. And I think that's one of the big, you know, the areas that is missing a lot of UGC is that you don't have, it breaks from kind of the traditional workflow of television and media production, which is like, a lot of times there's a huge value in having someone like an executive producer or producer who is just, you know, going, you know, have you thought about this or that, or the editor position. There's so much of it is just like me in my basement with my camera by myself thinking of this idea, and the missing component to take these totally capable people with incredible ideas to the next level is a layer of someone with the experience to say, have you thought about doing this rather than that? And so that's one kind of area of collaborating, and I think that's kind of how we do it on a daily basis most readily.
So in one way, you two are an interesting juxtaposition, because the head of one of your organizations is Al Gore, and the head of the other is George Bush. Yet you're both doing really...
Temporarily.
Let's hope. So you're both doing really interesting things. The question is, how much does leadership matter? Does it matter at all? What areas does it matter in? And at some level, can just like a bunch of good engineers do pretty much anything in that sort of the fog of bureaucracy?
A lot of engineers are doing amazing things in the fog of bureaucracy, but not, I mean, what NASA's really good at is doing executing massively complex engineering projects, okay? Like going to the moon when we've never been there before and having no idea how to do it within 10 years, okay? We might be really good, for example, at understanding the Earth as a planetary system and really doing Earth systems engineering to address climate change, for example. But within the fog of bureaucracy and the sort of very top-down structure that we have after 50 years, I think there are a lot of phenomenal ideas and talent that maybe doesn't get wasted, but it certainly doesn't get fully leveraged, and it doesn't get leveraged in a coherent way and through which people internally can collaborate maximally efficiently. There's a lot of stovepiping, there's a lot of sort of silos, there's a lot of closeting of information because kind of information is power when you don't have, again, the bottom line of money. So I think it does take leadership to set a vision, set a direction, to say you're going to work together whether you like it or not. You're going to give away information. You're going to open yourselves up to the public. You're going to take risks and all those kinds of things. I do think that needs to come from the top in a federal bureaucracy. And
It's all scary stuff, huh?
Yeah, and we've got, well, that does occur to people as scary internally. But when you have somebody like we have at NASA Ames, Pete Worden, who's willing to take risks himself and put on a wizard's outfit, right, and host a rave, that really helps because that gives other people the sort of the cultural cover to really start expressing their dissatisfaction and their dreams and to start working on those. So I think leadership is really important.
Yeah, and I think for us, the guiding principle and vision is, we have a really strong mission and corporate strategy, and that guides us across everything that we do. And then there's just a lot of really smart, young, talented people, like there are at a lot of companies across the Bay Area, and just giving those people space to experiment and innovate and play and find new ways of doing things. And I think a lot of how we've gotten to where we are has been on that very kind of strategy. It's just like let smart people and interesting people and people who have ideas, like let them have room to succeed and fail and learn from their failures and learn from their successes. And I think that's constantly been one of the management. We have an incredibly strong management team of experienced entrepreneurs and people from television and web, and but at the same time, I think they've been smart enough to say, let's give these people a lot of room to play and figure this thing out.
One final question.
So you both have talked about how you've lowered the barriers to participation, within your organization or within your industry. I'm very curious about how you've, gone out to actually get people to come in, to realize and not be afraid almost. In the case of you, Ezra, how you have gotten that 80% to deliver 20% of the content to either, do more, or in your case, Andrew, how you get people to actually come in and feel like they can participate with NASA. Yeah,
I think, it's a lot of fine tuning, and we've gotten a lot of things wrong over the last 3 years, and we're constantly iterating. And I think that this is one of the biggest things with collaboration is it's a two-way street, and I think there's a big mistake that a lot of people make is as the organization that actually you have to reach out probably further than someone reaching in, and you actually have to pull them in. And the way you pull them in is with a really a great selling proposition. So for us at Current, first of all, we pay for content. We give you lots of creative latitude and freedom. We give you incredible support from our internal team. We're a television network, so it's not just like your piece on YouTube, but you're going to have it playing potentially 60 million homes. There's so many other ancillary benefits where we really want to promote you, the creator. We're a reel builder. We're all those sorts of things, and I think that's the package. It's like what is the benefit? And I think for us, first of all, you're asking for something incredibly difficult. Go out and make a segment of television is not like, it's not like go, dig something or go, post on Twitter. It's like it's a huge challenge. It's hundreds of hours potentially of investment. And so you have to reciprocate with a package that, is valuable to the end user. And I'm sure, for you, it's a little bit different because I'm sure engineers are like, get to work for NASA? It's like, of course, yeah, why not? But, for us, we're an upstart brand where we don't have, 88% worldwide brand awareness like NASA does. So we have a much different challenge of targeting and selling that opportunity to young creators all over the world.
Yeah, I echo that. The external part is fairly easy for us. We just have to invite people to participate in an authentic way. And to some extent, make an effort to kind of speak the language of external communities, which the best way of which is to bring people from those external communities and to integrate them into our organization and as interns, volunteers, full-time employees, whatever. But our challenge is really, as I said before, been internal, not in terms of getting people excited from outside to come in and work with us.